Welcome to the Hot Dish, comfort food for rural America. I'm Heidi Heitkamp.
And I'm Joel Heitkamp. Today we get a chance to visit with Amanda Litman. Now, Amanda is co-founder of Run for Something. It's pretty cool. And then we'll check in with our good friend, State Senator Grant Housechild, for an update out of Minnesota.
You know, I'm so excited today because Amanda Litman, she does something that needs to happen so badly in this country, and that is recruit candidates. Everybody wants to help right now. Everybody wants to do something. But when you get them to the corner and say, okay, what you can do is run for office, they start backpedaling. She's the person who kind of holds their hand and makes it happen. And she's going to talk about her organization, which is called Run for Something. Amanda, thank you so much. We're going to get right to it because you are such an important guest. You have been out there advancing a very, very important agenda, which is recruiting and running a lot of different candidates, a lot of candidates who probably in their lifetime never thought that they would put their name on the ballot. Tell us why you've been so successful, how you've done it, and why you've been so successful, and what advice you could give to other people who are out recruiting candidates right now.
Thank you guys for having me. So for those who aren't familiar, Run for Something recruits and supports young, diverse leaders running for local office all across the country. We work primarily with folks 40 and under, local things like city council, school board, library board, state house, state senate, only small. We don't do federal, we don't do Congress, we don't do governors. We focus on the places where if you really care about your community and want to solve problems, you can run for office for the first or second time. We love working with folks from like non-traditional backgrounds. By that, I mean people who never saw themselves in politics before. Teachers, nurses, artists, scientists, parents, veterans. Yes, community organizers. Sure, there's some lawyers in there, but we've had rodeo stars. We've had people who worked at McDonald's and Chipotle. We've had small business owners, the kind of people whose perspectives you really want in government. We started back in 2017 thinking this would be a really small project. We thought we'd get maybe 100 people who wanted to run in the first year. This was going to be like my hobby, and I was going to get a real job after the 2016 presidential campaign. We had 1,000 people sign up in the first week. And as of today, we're up to more than 250,000 young people who've raised their hands to run for office.
Bravo.
It's, as far as we know, the largest candidate pipeline in politics. We've endorsed more than 4,000 campaigns and helped elect more than 1,653 across 49 states plus DC, just missing Idaho. So if any of your listeners are in Idaho and want to run for office, we would love to help you because I want that win. And I think it works because we know that people are hungry for new leadership. People are hungry for folks who really give a shit. And the folks that we ask to run for office and who say yes, they don't do it because it's fun or glamorous. They do it because they care about solving problems and they really want to do something to make their community better. So I'm really lucky. I have the best job in politics.
So, Amanda, what's the separator? I served in the state senate. I spent time as district chair recruiting people. Still am. I was spent last week out recruiting people. What's the separator between that person that locally they're recruiting versus that person that'll put their name on the ballot?
I would say for us, the thing we have found is that you never want to convince someone to run for office. If you have to beg and plead and make a compelling argument to someone to get them to run, they're probably not going to be a very good candidate because they're not going to have the motivation to do it. It's not glamorous enough. There's not enough money. There's certainly not enough power in most of these offices to make it worth it unless you're willing to work hard for it, unless you really want to do it. So the way that we think about it is we want to ask as many people as possible and then walk through the door with them if they say yes. And we want to make it clear, if you say yes, you're not alone. We're not going to hang you out to dry. You are going to have every possible resource and piece of information you need to set yourself up for success. And when things get hard, because they will get hard, we will have your back. But I don't ever want to beg and plead someone to run. I want to make sure that if they're even remotely thinking about it, or if they've never thought about it, we can plant the seed and then nudge them to yes over time.
That's really good advice. So that begs the question, how many of your candidates win?
It depends from year to year, but as I said, we've helped elect more than 1,653 as of a couple weeks ago. But last year we had a 65% win rate. So we're getting better at this year over year. In fact, in 2025, we flipped 43 red to blue seats across dozens of states. And if you'll remember, just 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, end of January, Taylor Ramett down in the Texas State Senate District in that special election was a run for something candidate. We recruited him to run actually years ago. He signed up with us back in 2019 because he saw an ad we posted somewhere, was in our pipeline, getting materials, staying as part of the conversation. And when the opportunity arose in his district in 2025, he got on the ballot. We endorsed him in August of 2025, stayed in close contact with his team, made sure he was ready for media and for the debate, that they had what they needed to succeed. And to see him both come in first in that election back in November and then wipe the floor with the Republicans in January, so gratifying and like proof of what we're talking about here, which is that really good candidates who reflect the community that they're running can make any race competitive.
So, Amanda, you're sitting at a kitchen table. You know you've got a good candidate. That candidate could be Taylor, could be whoever. But that's the candidate you're looking for to flip a district. And that candidate looks at you and says, I'd like to, but there's no way I'll ever win. What's your answer to that?
We have no idea what can happen. Anybody can win. Republicans get indicted all the time. there is always There is always a chance, and especially in a year like 2026, where we are seeing such dramatic swings, if there is ever a moment in which you are thinking, maybe this is the moment. The other thing to remind folks is that elections do not happen in a vacuum. So if you want where you're running to eventually become really competitive, if you want a 50-50 district or like a real flippable opportunity, sometimes that means you got to lose by less. And that doesn't mean be a sacrificial lamb. That doesn't mean just like throw yourself to the mountain lions, but to understand that your metric of success is going to be how much can you close the margin? How much can you move the gap over? You could take a district that's 70-30 to 65-45 to 60-40 to 55-45 to 50-50 pretty quickly, but you're not going to go from 70-30 to 50-50 overnight. So when we're working with candidates, you really try and remind them, maybe winning isn't like the most obvious outcome of this, but maybe. And even if you don't win, what good can you do as part of this race? How can you bring more people in? How can you force conversation on the issues? How can you galvanize your neighbors who might agree with you and want to see an alternative? And I will say one of the most compelling arguments I'll make to folks is, if you don't run, what dumb is going to put their name on the ballot? Like, who is the alternative?
Yeah, I mean, that is so important. When my first race was a statewide race for state auditor, and I always tell people I didn't win that race, but I talked about getting audits current. He was like 5 years behind and fiscal years behind in auditing. He had never done a performance audit. Guess what he did when he barely won? He started catching up. He started doing the right things. And that's the other thing, is that so much of what you can do is raise those issues, and it's gratifying to see how policy can change as a result of it. But I think that one of the things that we're hearing now, and Amanda, I know this is a tough topic, but people are afraid. If you're a progressive candidate, people think, I don't want to put my kids through that. I don't want to put my parents through that. I'm afraid that my husband will lose his job, which actually has happened to a number of people that I know who have ran. And so how do you respond to those concerns?
Totally legitimate fears. And I don't ever want to discount that anxiety or that hesitation. It is scary. It does require bravery. It will require risk. And there's a ton of resources out there to support you as much as we can. We started seeing candidates experience, honestly, security threats as recently as 2021, or as far back as 2021, I should say. After January 6th, there was an increase in hostility towards people running for office. So we put together a bunch of resources around candidate safety. How do you keep your personal address off of your filing paperwork so that it's not as public where you live? What can you do to protect your kids' safety online and off? How can you set up, relationships with law enforcement in your area? And if maybe law enforcement isn't the right person for you to have a partnership with, the right entity to have a partnership with, what else can you do to keep yourself and your campaign and your family safe? But I never want to tell people we can guarantee their safety. We can't. What I will say is that when you run for office and you face attacks or hostility or even danger, you should keep in mind that it's not personal. It is because you are threatening the status quo. You are demanding change. You are demanding progress. That is a testament to the work that you're doing and to the opportunity that you are creating. That doesn't mean it's not scary. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, both emotionally and in some cases, sadly, physically. But at the very least, you can depersonalize it and then tackle it intellectually as opposed to emotionally.
So, Amanda, one of the biggest hurdles it would seem to me that you would have is the fact that the people you're recruiting to run or the people that others have asked you to recruit to run work.
Hmm.
Democrats actually work.
Hmm.
It ain't mom and dad's money. It isn't, oh, yeah, I can do that. We actually are giving away or risking something by making this race. How do you overcome that? How do you look at that young man or young woman in the eye and say, I know daycare is an issue. I know that you're living check to check, but man, you'd be a good candidate. How do you get past that?
Again, we want to be really clear eyed with folks. This is going to require, if not financial sacrifice, um, it's not going to be easy. We like to tell candidates if you have a 9 to 5, campaigning will be your 5 to midnight. It will be your full time hobby outside of your full time job. There is a huge structural problem that we have in state and local government. State legislators should be paid way more than they are in basically every state. They should be full time in most places if they're not already. City council members and school board members and library board members should be paid roles because it's really hard to do these offices. It requires a lot of time. The way that our institutions are structured determines who is able to enter them. And right now, it's really hard for working people. But Remember Something has worked with thousands of candidates. 99.9% of them are not millionaires and billionaires. They're not self funding. They are people who have jobs or have caregiving responsibilities and also run for office. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it is absolutely doable. And if you run, we will connect you with other folks who have been in your life circumstances, whether it's paying for childcare or figuring out how to navigate, the caregiving of your family, or how to tell your boss you're running for office and have that conversation with them. We will connect you with people who have been in your shoes and can help guide you through it.
Well, when you look at money in
Hmm.
politics, and that's also, behind, I'm concerned about my kids. I don't want to get out there with one political party. I don't want to, I'd love to do the job. I think I've got something to contribute, but I also don't want to ask for money. I don't want to raise money. How do you get over that hurdle?
I think of fundraising as a public service. When you think about what you do, and what so many of us have done over the last now almost 10 years, when things feel bad, when things feel stressful, when there is a crisis, one of the most meaningful ways you can help is by making a donation. Even $5, $15, $20 to whether it's a local community organization or a political campaign or an advocacy group, that really does matter. You know, I won't say it's like throwing money at the problem, but it's supporting the work that makes a difference. So when you ask someone to invest in your campaign, you're giving them an opportunity to solve the problems in your home, in the place that they live. And I like to remind candidates, you're not asking for like a loan for lunch. You're not asking them to buy you pizza. You're asking them to invest in the place that they love and the place that they live. If they care about it, they should be excited to make that money, to move that money if they can.
Yeah, I'm just coming off a job where the focus is all on young people, and I just talked to. I'm not kidding. 3,000 motivated high school, and without a doubt, every one of those kids came up to me that wanted to talk to me afterwards, saying, "How do I get involved? How do I get engaged?" And one thing I think we forget is there's a whole lot of folks who want to help.
Hmm.
Obviously these kids couldn't write a big check, but they definitely could help organize. They're great with social media. So look around your community. What resources do you have in your family? What resources do you have with people in the community? But it's just it is, and I have to say this. I think that the day of these commercials and slick glossy, that you have access to so many ways of communicating with potential voters that doesn't involve money. It involves authenticity and a genuine interest in talking about the issues and what you plan on doing about them.
I mean, we've seen this over and over again, especially in the last 11 months, since Trump won in 2024. The red to blue flips, the special elections, even so many of our candidates in 2025, they were outspent. Money speaks, sure, but it's not as loud as it used to be.
I
You
think
really
that's right.
can break through with a compelling story, connections to your community, and the ability to communicate that in a way that rings true to people. Like if they trust you, that can overcome any kind of spending discrepancy.
Now, both of you be patient with me. Okay.
Mm.
You got to understand, I got five sisters, five granddaughters, a wife that's very strong willed. So understand that before I ask this question. But Amanda, how do you get past the woman issue? And by that, I mean, I've been recruiting people to run for the state legislature, and the response that I have gotten from women, and it's 2026 at times, has been that's a man's job. A woman can't win that job. He has time. I mean, it seems to me that a lot of the women that I think would be great legislators, great local leaders, don't believe they should be doing it because they're a woman. And so, how do you get past that?
We keep asking and ask and ask and ask. And we prove that that's not true. Run for Something has helped elect nearly 1,000 women across the country, women of color, LGBTQIA women, women with no money, little experience in politics beyond caring deeply about their community. The thing I come back to is that this work compounds on itself. When you elect one person who breaks the mold, dozens more follow to be like, I didn't know someone like me could do that. Can you help me too? We've seen it cycle after cycle. So it's why my team works so hard on telling the stories of the leaders we've helped elect, because those women you're talking to are wrong. Send me to talk to them. I can convince them. It really is, I think, necessary to just not take no for an answer, or at the very least, continually opening the door to yes.
I know they're wrong, and in fact,
Hmm.
give me your phone number because I haven't been able to recruit them. But you're right. I mean, it's just hard. It's hard here in the middle of this country. And Heidi, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you haven't seen a lot of. Here's the sad truth about where we live. In 1980, North Dakota was in the top 5 states for women in the representing legislative districts. And think about that. And now we're in the bottom. And I think a lot of that is number one, that women tend to run more as Democrats, and it's harder to elect Democrats in a state like North Dakota. But I also think that it's like this world has gotten way too hard. I'm going to find other ways to give back. And I always tell my origin story, which was I started out recruiting. I started
Mm,
out basically talking to every woman who was on the county commissions, school board, saying, "Do you want to run on the statewide ticket?" And they would just say no. But if you do it, we'll help.
mm.
So eventually I did it, and they all showed up and they all helped. But I think that when you show people an opportunity and you get them thinking. I mean, Joel, I was there when you were recruiting one of a young farmer, smart guy, successful in what he's doing, beautiful family, and he may not do it this time, but you opened up his aperture, right? He's now thinking, okay, maybe not now, but later. And so that Amanda, I think that's the secret sauce. You may not get him this time, but you might get him, 2 years down the line. You might not get him for the legislature, but you might get him for city council.
Or
And
school
so,
board, or
we
yeah.
just keep the list going.
Well, this is why Run for Something maintains a pipeline going back almost 10 years, because sometimes it does take people 10 years for both the politics and their personal life to line up in such a way that they are ready to run and the opportunity is out there. So it's not a short term engagement. It's not like asking someone to volunteer where we ask you today to show up at a phone bank 3 days from now. I'm asking you to change your life. I'm asking you to do that because I believe that if you do, you can change your community and ultimately change the world. I believe that if you love the place you live, you can make such a meaningful difference in it by running, whether you win or lose. And I believe that if you run, you could win. No matter where you are, no matter how long the odds are, you never know what's going to happen. The experts, and am I an expert? I don't know, but we don't know shit about shit. We have no idea what makes voters want to do what they want to do. We have no idea who or what could win. If you do this, you, my mythical recruit, you could be the person who breaks history or makes history. You could be the person who surprises everyone. And when you are ready, Run for Something will be there to help you.
Well, Donald Trump won.
Yeah, what do we know? We know nothing.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. You say, well, you can win. Hello. I mean, the country elected the biggest buffoon that you can possibly elect. Joel Heikamp's opinion, along with millions and millions of people. But that being said, those jobs, once they win, to be able to do those jobs, clearly the people that you have running, do you go back to them? Do you check with them and say, are you digging it? Are you liking it? Are you ready to? I mean, is there any follow up to it?
Yeah. So we work with a bunch of organizations that do actual organizing of electeds, folks like Future Caucus, local Progress, State Innovation Exchange. But we especially do stay in relationship with our alumni. I'm really excited that this year we have, oh my God, a half dozen folks running for Senate, a half dozen running for governor, a couple dozen running for House, a bunch running for statewide offices, at least a half dozen running for mayor. It's a really cool, diverse, interesting, talented bench of people. And we stay in contact with them. Maybe as an organization, we don't help them, but I do as an individual, and our team does behind the scenes.
So, Amanda, when are you going to run for office?
I knew it was coming. I knew it, Amanda. I knew it.
Thank you for asking. I believe you should run for office because there's a problem you care about solving and an office that gives you power to solve it. This is the problem I care about solving.
Oh, look at you. You have obviously practiced that answer, Amanda. You'd be a great candidate. You'd be a great elected official.
Amanda, we just met, and I'm going to tell you, don't run for office. What you're doing is more important. I don't care what that office is, because where I live, people don't understand the importance of that school board member, that township member, that county commission member, and you do, and your organization does. How do people get in touch with you, Amanda?
So if they're thinking about running for office, which it's not too late in many places to get on the ballot for 2026, and it's definitely not too early to get started for 2027 or 2028, you can go look up what offices are available for you at runforwhat.net. If you want to learn more about the organization or about our team, you can go to runforsomething.net. And I'm just yapping away all over the internet. If you just Google me on whatever platform you're on, you'll probably find me.
You are absolutely a national treasure.
Thank you.
Operating in a really, really difficult time, but also a time when I think people feel the call to service, the call to do something. And so you have given them lots of food for thought. I hope that you get an incredible amount of attention from our viewers and our listeners. And thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us. But more importantly, thank you for the incredible work that you do.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Well, there's been a lot of news out of Minnesota lately, so we want to bring on our friend, Grant Housechild, to share a quick update.
Well, and Grant, we take credit for him. He worked for me, worked on my campaigns. Now he's representing a very rural district in greater Minnesota, the Duluth area. And he has been doing an incredible amount of great work representing that constituency, bringing a different perspective sometimes than what you get from the Minneapolis, or as we say, the cities. And so, Grant, we are so glad that you could join us on the Hot Dish.
Thanks so much for having me, Heidi and Joel. It's good to see you.
So, Grant, tell us about last week's caucuses in Minnesota.
We just had our caucuses and the turnout was tremendous. On the Democratic Farmer Labor side, the Democratic Party in Minnesota, We had over 31,000 people show up at our caucuses, which is certainly a record since probably the Obama era. And on the Republican side, they had about 17,000 people showed up because they have a big contest for governor playing out right now in their endorsement process. So a lot of people coming out, casting their ballots in a straw poll at their caucuses. Minnesota is one of the highest turnout states and civically engaged states in the country. So it's not surprising to see all of these people showing up and making their voices heard. But Minnesota has had some really unique challenges over the last year. Our Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and Senator John Hoffman were assassinated and shot in their homes. We had the Annunciation School shooting in Minnesota, where children were gunned down in their school in a church in downtown Minneapolis. And then most recently, with the ICE presence in our communities, over 3,000 ICE agents across Minnesota, both in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but also in greater Minnesota in places that I represent. So there have been a lot of things on Minnesotans' mind. And I think really people are wanting to make sure that their voices are heard in this moment in our history.
You mentioned ICE, which we've talked a lot about here on the Hot Dish lately. Talk to us about how Minnesotans are responding to ICE's presence on the ground there.
Well, I will just say, my heart goes out to the families of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. I think the whole world, and particularly those of us in Minnesota, were shook by those moments. And I think a lot of people are rightfully outraged by what is happening here in Minnesota. And I'm really proud of my state because we made it clear that we will not take what is happening to us. We are going to stand up, make our voices clear, and stand up for the Constitution, stand up for due process, and stand up for our neighbors. I've heard stories of people being afraid to drop their kids off at daycare and school because of patrolling officers outside of those locations. That's not the way that we should be living under a central government with these types of forces in our neighborhood. So my hope is that we are being heard at the national level, and that at this upcoming legislative session, we can make our voices all the more clear about how we won't take this anymore. And we're going to do everything we can to protect our neighbors and have each other's back in this moment.
And it's getting noticed not just in the United States, but across the world. And I just thought there was great irony in the fact that the people of Minneapolis have been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. I think when you look at the criteria, it makes sense to me that they've earned it. But I think it is well-deserved, and the courage of people and the commitment and the generosity of people as they go through what it can only be described as an invasion of their city and their community is inspiring, not just to us, but globally. But, Grant, we have a special affinity for rural issues here. Talk to us about what's happening in your district and what people are talking about.
Absolutely. So I represent the most rural district in the state of Minnesota for a Democrat or a Republican. I'm in the northeast Arrowhead corner of the state. And one of the issues that we've really been highlighting is this crisis that we're facing in rural healthcare, particularly with the big, beautiful bill that happened at the federal level, crushing our Medicaid patients in many of our rural clinics and hospitals. But the other thing is the rural EMS services, rural ambulance services in our communities. These don't get reimbursed at a rate that makes them sustainable. We have aging populations in our rural communities and distances that make it very difficult to be sustainable. And so in Minnesota, we've really highlighted this issue through a EMS task force, where we have worked on legislation to provide state aid to rural EMS providers across Minnesota to keep them afloat, as well as changing the regulatory environment to be more proactive in helping these services rather than sort of punishing them for making mistakes. So my hope is that we're really sort of showing a model for how state government can support our rural communities with critical services like rural healthcare and rural EMS. And we're going to keep focusing on those issues to make sure that no matter what your zip code is, you can rely on healthcare and life-saving care when you need it.
Well, it's great hearing from you, Grant. And hang in there. We're with you all the way. And we are so proud of you, so proud of the state of Minnesota. Keep the faith. When we look back at this, it'll be our turn. I always think it's this generation's civil rights movement, what's happening right now. And Minnesota is standing tall.
You bet. See you, Grant.
Thanks so much for having me, Heidi and Joel. And it's so great to see you guys. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Joel, actually, people are calling us. They want our opinion. I don't know why. Because they're probably a lot smarter than we are, but people are scared out there, and you see that in the questioning that we're getting. Teresa wrote in to talk about her concern about rising challenges in this country, and she said, "What can we do to stop this madness when Trump's cronies control the White House, Congress, and the Supreme Court?" You got an answer to that, Joel?
Well, I'm a radio talk show host, so trust me. Teresa, thank you for being polite, because I've been called a lot of bad names on the radio, and so I'm used to that. But the truth of the matter is, engage. I mean, Minnesotans have showed that, Heidi. You know, a guy's got to engage, not take their shit. You know, I mean, I call it my Matter VFW Hall conversation. When you walk into a group of people, and let me give you a scenario of how I live my life, right? Trump empowered people that never, ever spoke about public policy or politics before. And they really don't care about public policy or politics. What they care about is power and being in control. And so authoritarianism, right? And so what they want more than anything is they want everybody to notice them. And when I engage with them, because I might know the issues a little better, and they maybe don't scare me, right? And when I get up in their grill a little bit, what happens? They start putting it in reverse a little bit. And then everybody around them goes, yeah, you know, Dale wasn't that bright in the first place. And so to me, that's it, Hyde. It's a one-on-one, take them on, but you're not talking to them. You're talking to the people around them.
Yeah, that's actually the point that I want to make, Joel. And when you say, what can you do? We need to change. We need to change leadership in the Congress. We need to change leadership in the White House. We need to change leadership in the Supreme Court. She's absolutely right. But we do still have a functioning democracy, and that means that we get to promote those changes. And so I think it is look around, find out who your representative is. If you're in a district that elects Democrats, help them return. If you're in a district that elects Republicans, take a look at who's running on the other side and how you can help them. Go door to door, do phone banking, write cards, talk to your friends and neighbors. You know, the campaigns are expensive, but think about 20 people you might be able to bring to the poll that wouldn't otherwise vote or would vote the other way that you could persuade. Do you know what those 20 votes are worth in most congressional races? They're golden. And so, yeah, you know, number one, believe you have power. And number two, do everything you can to exercise that power. I think it was Benjamin Franklin once said the most important role in American public life is the role of citizen. We all need to step up the way they've stepped up in Minnesota.
Yeah. He also said, we have a democracy if we can keep it. And
We
I'm
have a
scared about it
republic
right
if we
now.
can
You know?
keep it.
So
Yeah.
here's the thing. Walk in a parade.
Yeah.
Right.
Show your
No,
neighbors which
yeah.
side you're on.
Throw some candy out. Put the T-shirt on. I mean, you strike me as somebody that isn't afraid to do that, but engage.
Joel, we also heard from Dorothy, who said, we're becoming North Korea. Boy, I've felt that many, many times, especially when you're watching the cabinet meetings, and it just seems to be dear leader rather than what are the problems of the American people that they're going to solve in that room. It's a matter of, you know, how can we, lick the boot even harder, and how can we get more attention from this man? I mean, it's frightening when you watch it. And I don't know what to tell you other than get out there, get working. The same advice we gave Teresa.
I have specific advice. So grab a notepad and do this. 1-800 call John Thune. John Thune is the most powerful member of Congress. He doesn't get the attention he deserves. And he is the one that it seems to me is smart enough to realize what Donald Trump is doing to this country. And yet he doesn't feel any pressure for it. And he caves and he caves and he caves. And so you got this tall, handsome, oh, what a good guy. And he just kind of shakes his head and gives you that look like, well, it's Donald being Donald. You know what? Make John Thune own it. Make him realize that this time in America's history, he's responsible for what's going on. So specifically, call John Thune and tell him to get off his ass and do something.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on The Hot Dish, Comfort Food for Rural America. We love hearing from our listeners. Keep those letters coming and keep the faith. You know, we the people can change this, and Minnesota is proving it. So keep the faith and get out on the street, walk in a rally, help a candidate. This is our time, and we don't want to look back on this time, quite honestly, and say, I sat on the sidelines and wrung my hands. We want people to know we took action.
So, you know, those messages we got, they mean a lot to us. Send us more. You can go to onecountryproject.org and reach us there. It's pretty simple. You go to onecountryproject.org. And don't forget to follow us on Substack, YouTube, Facebook, and Blue Sky.
And we will be back next week with more from The Hot Dish, Comfort Food for Rural America. This podcast is brought to you by One Country Project, making sure the voices of the rest of us are heard in Washington. You can learn more about us at onecountryproject.org and follow us on Substack, Facebook, Blue Sky, and YouTube. I'm Heidi Heitkamp. Thanks for listening.
Hot Topica.